So let's get right to it.
Okay.
There has been a lot of talk about the cicadas. Can you just tell us a little bit about the cicadas and what makes this brood so special?
The periodical cicadas in eastern North America have a different number of broods, and so the broods come out different on different 17-year cycles. So the brood that's coming out this year is brood 10, which extends over a large part of central and western Ohio into Indiana, into southern Michigan a little bit, and then into some eastern states, Maryland and Tennessee, eastern Tennessee, and some other states. So it's a very large brood of cicadas. A 17-year cicada is called that because the nymphal stages, the immature stages, live underground for 17 years, feeding on tree roots. And then they emerge all at the same time, which makes it a very dramatic insect invasion when that happens. And we don't have the periodical cicada in this part of Ohio. It's interesting that it gets as far north as Findlay, just south of Findlay, Defiance County sometimes, and some other counties around that area. But we don't actually have it in this part of Ohio. And I can think of a lot of people are thankful for that.
Yeah.
So we don't have to deal with all those cicadas. So now that the weather is warming up, we should start to see those pretty quickly coming out. Can't put an exact date on it, but I'm sure that'll happen fairly soon.
Yeah, we're starting to see more and more pictures of it. At least in the last 48 hours, I feel like we've seen a lot more. I didn't realize that there were different broods. So is there any overlap? So we have this brood 10. Is there any other cicada broods that we see other times of the year
There's
or other years?
another brood 14, that occurs in southwest Ohio. So they get actually both of these broods that are on different cycles, different 17-year cycles. And then other parts of Ohio, eastern Ohio, southern Ohio, have another brood that they receive. And so we have these emerging at different cycles.
Do you happen to, because we are in Southwest Ohio, we're in the Dayton area. So
Yeah,
when does brood 14, do
it
you
doesn't
know?
get I don't think it gets as far north as you. It's more Cincinnati area, very extremely southwest part into Kentucky, and doesn't get as far north as you, I believe.
I was just curious because I had somebody else that works with me. They said they remember like a lot of cicadas when they were younger, but it wasn't 17 years ago. So I wonder if there was somewhere in the area that maybe it was the brood 14 emergence, perhaps.
We actually have another species or two of cicadas that come out every year. They're called the dog day cicadas. And sometimes those can be somewhat abundant, but not on the scale of periodical cicadas, which come out in very large numbers. So we do have a dog day cicada that has overlapping generations. So there's always some coming out every season. And that's the common one people see every summer.
I remember my grandmother always saying that summer was over when we could hear the cicadas, but I feel like
Yeah.
it's actually telling me the summer's beginning.
Yeah, with periodical cicadas, they come out a little sooner than the dog day cicadas. The dog day called that because they come out in late July, August, the so-called dog days of summer, which actually refers to the dog star, although some people think it refers to the fact that it's so sultry and hot that
Mm-hmm.
not even the dog likes it. So I guess you could look at it either way. You could look at the dog star, you could look at the dogs. So
That's interesting. So, how do these cicadas, are they impactful on our trees? I've seen some stories about that.
yeah, they can affect trees. The female cicada makes a slit in tree branches, and she lays her eggs in those slits. So young trees, especially, can be damaged by this. Older trees tend not to really suffer that much from it. But young saplings, younger trees can have some severe damage from these cicadas. So you just have to hope that that doesn't happen if you have some trees that you're trying to grow in your yard or somewhere that you don't want those to damage,
Right.
the smaller trees.
I've heard some theories as to why it's every 17 years, but I'll let you answer. Why do these bugs stay in the ground for over a decade and then come out just for a short period of time?
They have a very slow life cycle. It just takes a long time for them to develop underground. And this is one of the longest lived insects. The adults don't live very long, but the nymphal stages live very long. underground. So it's just evolved that way to have a very long life cycle. There's 13-year periodical cicadas, there's 17-year. There's some that have 5 or 7-year cycles. So there's different species that have different lengths of life cycles. But I don't think anyone's really absolutely sure why they evolved to have such a long life cycle. But it's very interesting that they synchronize
Yeah,
and
it is
come
interesting.
out. Yeah.
So how far down are they for these 17 years?
In Ohio.
Or in the soil? Like how far are they down in
Oh,
the soil?
they're below the frost line. So whatever, however cold it gets in the soil, they burrow down farther than that and feed on tree roots.
Mm.
So they're not affected by winter temperatures.
Yeah, because I had a viewer ask me, could they go out in their yard and dig down and find them?
Yeah, not likely. They might move up when the weather gets warmer. They might move up closer to the surface, especially when they're ready to emerge. Obviously, they're going to come out of the ground, but the nymphs will tend to migrate up and down to avoid the colder temperatures. Yeah.
So is there anything about them that fascinates you?
It's just amazing how many can come out at one time. It's one of the miracles of nature, I think, if you want to look at it that way. Some people don't consider it that way. If they have, big outdoor plans this time of year, and then they're spoiled by these cicadas. Some people have outdoor weddings and family reunions that can be impacted by these cicadas. And so a lot of people don't look at them as favorably as I do, but and then the potential damage, certainly with trees, you have to be concerned about that. But,
So they
yeah,
do have a potential danger to the trees, but other than
yeah.
that, there's no real threat to
No,
animals or people, right?
well, sometimes dogs and cats will eat the cicadas and they might get upset stomach from that, but it's not dangerous to the animals, really. They're not affecting animals directly. But sometimes the dogs will eat a few too many, and like dogs will tend to do, eat too much of something and get sick. But
That's what dogs do, right?
yeah, right. Yeah.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you about that is interesting about the cicadas?
Um, I can't think of anything else, McCall. I think that really just the fact that they have the synchronization of this life cycle in different parts of the eastern U.S.
I guess one final question that I have is after the female cicada lays the eggs in the trees, you said,
Yeah,
how long until they fall out into the ground and
they
continue
they
their
hatch
cycle?
they hatch probably in a week or so, and they drop to the ground, burrow in, so they don't stay out above ground very long.
So
Um,
that from emergence to they have moved on to their passing, how long is that time frame?
for the nymphs,
For the adult cicadas.
the adults only live probably a few weeks, so there's going to be a peak of emergence when you're going to see a lot of the adults, and then they don't live a terribly long time. They're not going to persist over the entire summer. They'll eventually die. Even the dog day cicadas don't live probably 5 or 6 weeks. I think it usually is a typical lifespan for the adult.
And I
So it's
think that
interesting the adults don't live that long, but the nymphs live a very long time.
I was joking with my coworker Dante. I was like, what a life. They spend 17 years underground and then they come outside and they're only
Yeah,
here for a couple weeks.
they only live long enough to mate and
And that's it.
lay eggs, and that's about it. All right.
So what I think is interesting before I let you go is that because you have your dog days cicadas. So when we get to the middle of the summer and we see some cicadas or hear some cicadas, that's a completely different, do you call it a brood? A completely different brood than this one?
It's a different species, a different brood. So they have overlapping broods. So there's always some coming out every year. They don't have the synchronization we see with these periodical species. So we don't see that with the dog day cicadas.
That's really cool. I mean,
Yeah,
they're creepy looking, but I
they are.
mean,
Yeah,
they're, a really cool thing about nature.
it is amazing. That's for sure.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much for
Well, you're
taking
welcome.
this time to chat with me
Yeah.
and I'll definitely send emails along if I have any more questions.
Yeah, certainly do that. And it's nice meeting you and talking with you too.
You too. Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.